Welcome, folks, to the September 11th, 2024 Aries Working Group call. This is a Hyperledger call, and so the antitrust policy and the Hyperledger Code of Conduct are in effect. Links to the agenda are in the chat. You're welcome to make any changes useful and get in on some of the drafts and the other stuff that we have linked there, and I'll talk about that in a minute. Anyone new that would like to introduce themselves? We are glad you're all here. Any release status or work updates for folks to share?
Actually, I should have had an announcement in there. The TDW meeting is tomorrow, the first one. I'll post a note. It is at 9 Pacific. So I'll add that to the agenda. But the diff meeting is beginning, and so we're delighted to have those starting. We'll be kicking off. We probably will be every second week in the future, but for probably this week and next, we'll have a meeting, I think.
If you have a link,
yeah,
if you have a link for that, that'd be awesome here.
I do. I have the agenda with the Zoom, so I'll just add that now.
Sweet. Cool. And go ahead and save it. It'll show up after I save stuff.
Yeah.
Cool. Any other announcements? IAW is soon. That's at the end of next month. So that's worth a consideration there. If you have not been, I highly recommend it as a quite useful conference. It's my favorite to attend. So yes. Any work updates or release status notes? Right. Okay. On the agenda today is a couple things. One is a review of kind of where we are. We actually have I should clarify, this is a press release type of a thing. Like, hang on. Actually, that's not what we're talking about there. Now that I think about it. Messaging. I'm going to avoid confusing what we mean by PRs. That's what I mean there. So we have a proposed sort of messaging statement that the community can offer, leave on the wiki, etc., to help folks understand what happened and then where it went in different pieces. We'll get to that in a minute. And then we have two PRs under review. We have the unrevoked message, and we have the VDR proxy. These are two actively moved PRs to discuss today. So any adjustments to the agenda that we want to make before we get going? All right. So here is the document. Retitling. The title here is still the ACAPI application to OWF, Stephen. I don't know if that hadn't got changed.
I mean, yeah, it should be ACAPI plus. Yeah.
So this document here. Yeah, go ahead.
Nope, go ahead.
Oh, so Stephen has put together this document, and it details and you can see in the line over here, there's a handful of things to be moved. All of Aries will not end up as the same project in OWF, or the same to the elements moving to the diff. So here's an ACAPI application as a project. Here's an ASCAR application to a project, and then there's the testing stuff that's as a project, and mediation stuff moving as a project. And then there's a proposal down here for a new SIG on WADA interoperability, which will take the place of this call. And so There's some this is all nicely stepped out and written and organized with feedback coming from this group and others into the document and into the proposal as moved. So this is still the right place to sort of review the plan from an execution perspective. Um, and then the next thing I believe in the process is to actually open pull requests into the Open Wall Foundation, given feedback here. The other thing that I wanted to highlight was Stephen's message that went both to the mailing list and was posted to Discord as well, um, summarizing these changes as well. I got one note of positive feedback that I saw there, Stephen, in Discord.
Yep.
And otherwise, I have received no other feedback at all. Um, and so we wanted to
Yeah, the
bring.
two things I saw was mentions of just AATH. So both Sheldon and Daryl O'Donnell mentioned AATH of I adjusted where we were moving it. Evidently under Bifold is Aries mobile test harness, but that's supposed to be an independent project from Bifold. And so the idea is again to move all three of them together. And Daryl's looking to in an initiative he's part of, looking to expand out what AATH is doing. So we've already got others interested in expanding out its capabilities. So that's good. But those are the only two comments, and they weren't negative in any way.
Right. So before we get onto the proposed messaging here, any feedback, any now that people have had a minute to ruminate on it and read that stuff, any feedback from this group today? All right, please do, if you have some, please do send it, post it, share it so that we can read and understand and incorporate. So the next thing I wanted to bring up was messaging. I had talked with Helen, who is from a DCO who has been working with Aries marketing stuff. And so she has this proposed document, which I've linked down below, and it should be open for commenting, um, describing stuff happening here. The language needs to be tuned here a little bit. What's missing from this in particular is mention of the DIDCOM work at the diff, and a discussion of the code base plus the community work kind of stuff that needs to be incorporated. So that needs to be added here. But this is the intention of this is that it could be remain on the main wiki page for the hyper, for Hyperledger Aries, so that people can. It's the same URL that we have now that we're with the meetings and everything else, and that way people can kind of read and understand what's happening. So here's a why, here's a what's next, acknowledgement to Hyperledger, how to stay involved, and then this is the and Stephen, you have a better version of this. But this will be
Yeah.
basically a description of what the assets are and also the meetings, and there's new meeting times and stuff as appropriate, and we fill this table out on the wiki and make sure that that remains accurate so people that arrive at the old place know how to find the new place. And so this
Yep.
is the same idea, and of course we'll need to update the details substantially, but that's what's
Yeah.
there. So I think this generally it needs some sort of some mention of the DIDCOM specific stuff, as this currently focuses just on the OWF pieces of it, which are significant. But it's worth taking a look at this and understanding the wording. We can make any adjustments. This is just proposed, but that way, as this begins to be executed, that we can clearly message what's happening, why, and when, and how to folks who arrive looking for Aries, and can know where to find stuff. Any thoughts, comments? And again, this is linked in the agenda under messaging there. I guess I should hit save periodically so that it, merges and gets current. So that's here.
I think, yeah, I think the title's got to change and the initial paragraph, just because it's not Aries that's moving. It is the projects or sub-projects, however you want to call them, within Aries are moving independently, um, and I would personally emphasize the wallet interoperability SIG as the where the work will continue.
Yes, you're right. That's not mentioned here either. So there's a mention down here, but I think
Yeah.
putting that at the top. I don't
Mhm.
know that I disagree that Aries isn't moving. I think technically
Yeah.
speaking, there's pieces moving, but in practical effect, Aries, the work that has been happening at Aries is moving, and maybe
Yeah.
that's just a little adjustment of the language there.
Yeah.
Um,
Okay.
so, and we don't need to tune this today, but I did want to get started on the messaging so that when we need
Yeah.
it, it's ready, as opposed to
Yeah.
suddenly trying to scrape something together.
Yep.
Um, so, um, so yes, that's good feedback though. Um, so, hang on, let me just write a note here so that,
Yep.
okay, just so that I don't remember those points because those are good. So yes, and transition is a good word here. And so anyway, we need to word tune that a little bit. Feedback is very welcome. You can either just do it in suggestion mode or in editing or in comment mode, and that way you can. If you don't know how to say it, then go ahead and add a comment. If you have suggested wording, then doing it in suggest mode is really helpful because it's just really easy to hit the accept button with a good suggestion. Comments, questions? And I know you've just seen this, and so we're not, this is under no, we're not trying to like approve or adopt this today, but just raise it and surface it. But soon we'll want to sort of get this ready to go so that we have it ready to stick on the wiki as things begin to execute. Stephen, I think the next step for your document is to actually open PRs over in the Open Wall Foundation,
Yep.
which starts the
Yeah.
conversation process there. I have
I was
heard
about to say,
no.
yeah, I was about to say that you had said feedback would go to the doc continue. I don't think that's right. We'll open the PRs. I'll post them to the mailing list and to Discord, and any feedback now goes to where the PRs are. Does that make sense?
Yes, and it's worth putting a note on the top of your doc for such
Yes,
as those are
that's a great
open. Yeah,
idea.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yes, yeah. You're right. So as this transition happens and PRs are open, then pointing to those I think is good. Like, hey, feedback goes over here.
Yeah.
Yep. So I've heard no opposition voice that we should not be making this move. And we've circulated it. It's shown up in the mailing list and in Discord and in the other variety of places. And so um, that's so I think we're clear to begin that process. There has been no objection registered. So yeah, I think that you're free to move forward with that process, Steve, of opening the PRs.
Cool. Yeah. That's good.
And then there's meetings and OWF TAC voting stuff that actually happens next.
Exactly.
And then
Yeah.
the marketing that we're working on here drops into here, et cetera, to make that actually happen. So
Exactly. Yeah.
cool. The other thing that we could do is basically based on the dates and the fact that we're unlikely to get this all approved before the 19th of October, that I thought of, Stephen, is that we can make the messaging without particular mention of sponsoring organizations. Once the moratorium is over, we can follow up with some stuff that ties it together and kind of makes public the
Yeah,
support for the projects and all that. Does that align
yeah,
with your expectations? Okay,
yeah, yeah.
cool. Any other questions about where we are, what's going on, what's your review, how to make your voice heard? All right, and the invitation, of course, extends beyond the folks that are actually attending today. Anyone who's listening to the recording or otherwise involved, we definitely want to hear from everyone. Attendance at the meetings is not a requirement for making your voice heard. So yeah, cool. Okay. Next on the agenda, we have two PRs. Um, so we have the VDR proxy that Stephen has opened up, and then the unrevoke. So down into the VDR proxy, this has been commented on and has been open for a while. And then we had some discussion back here in May, and then we have some comments here. Um, so we are lucky enough to have Sir Romano here with us to be able to clarify any of the comments or anything else that needs to happen. But I'm curious kind of where this sits, Stephen, from your perspective, and then what open questions we might have that we can use to move this forward.
Well, basically, the my question is what I commented here. Uh, I I noticed that when I was trying to develop that protocol, I was trying to develop it in JavaScript, and one thing I noted that is the behavior of the thing. When we are requesting deeds, credential definitions, schemas from the VDR, in Indie, actually. It's like an HTTP request. You request and you got the response right away, and that's not the case with those DIDCOM messages. You have
Mhm.
no sure you're not sure when you're gonna have the response, and that thinking in a proof presentation, for example, that will hold the process. And basically, I I actually don't have a
Mhm.
clue to how to get rid of that problem.
Are you using a mediator for your JavaScript application?
Um,
Like,
Actually, I was just developing the protocol, but
Yeah.
the our 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 proxy that we develop here in our team, we used the mediator to no, no, mistaken. I didn't use the mediator. It was just like a REST service.
right. So there's only
Yeah.
some minor differences at using DIDCOM. For example, and I've got some code examples that I can point you to that allow your code to operate more or less the same as it would with the DIDCOM messages as it does with REST requests. The difference is that REST requests tend to be there's an expectation that the answer comes back. That's not actually always true. That can time out, or other error exceptions can happen. Um, but under the normal case, there's an expectation that it comes right back. With DIDCOM messages, your software needs to be aware of and wait for an inbound message to actually occur. But that's really easy in languages with async await behavior. And so JavaScript has that. Python has that. That's what I have the code example in. And so you can do either, um, but the ability to like the knowledge on waiting for a response from the other side with a didcom message is something that isn't terribly difficult to do. You just have to be able to understand the difference in message flows because it is message oriented instead of RPC. But the difference is about the same there, and I can provide examples if you'd like on how to structure your code so that that becomes an easy problem rather than a hard one.
Well, I think I'll get in touch with you on Discord and we can discuss this later. You pass me the code so I can exercise that.
Yeah, I'd be happy to guide or give you feedback on that part of things. One of the things that's missing from the DIDCOM book is that there's an assumption that you're already familiar with message processing architectures, and lots of folks that are using DIDCOM are not. And so one of the things that we need to be adding to the DIDCOM book is a guide on best practices for doing exactly that, for handling the uh, the message-based nature of DIDCOM itself, and then what that looks like in your code. So definitely, please do reach out. I'd love to review what you've got and then share the approaches that we've used to make that simple.
Okay.
So that seems to address this one here in particular. Your
Yeah, just so
response.
you know, from our perspective, just the wallet team just de-emphasized the need for the VDR proxy. It just wasn't the hottest thing going, and that's why we've sort of slowed down on anything happening with this.
Is there any reason we shouldn't merge it as the work is there?
I would sort out if you and Thiago could work out this issue, that would be great.
This is a fundamental DIDCOM issue, not
Yeah,
related to the VDR
exactly,
proxy.
but at least get the document in there. Like document an answer to this as opposed to leaving this in a PR that's ready to merge.
I see what you're
So
saying.
even just saying, here's the best practices for doing that. And I'd like to know too. And then we can also look at where else to put that. Because that is as soon as I saw the comment here, it was like, oh yeah, it really changes your code.
It actually doesn't have to.
Let alone
Yeah.
the potential for delay, but it's just the change. It can change. That's what you're saying is it doesn't have to. So that's what I'm intrigued with. I was less worried about how much the performance effect, because I don't think it would be massive probably. But especially if your WebSocket connected to your mediator and using your mediator for it. But the asynchronous nature. So what you're talking about would be really helpful to document, and then we can maybe put it somewhere else as well.
Well, I was thinking I should just write it up and open it up as a PR to the DIDCOM book, since it's a conceptual thing, and then we could talk about that there, and then link it as in response to this particular question.
Yeah.
So
That'd be great.
yeah. Okay. I've got that comment added there. Okay. Next. Unrevoke.
Yeah, that is an easy one. Basically,
Yeah.
the revocation notification doesn't provide some info if the credential was revoked or unrevoked. So I think the goal here is to give some feedbacks like when you unrevoke a credential, the holder be noticed to be notified to, right?
So can you talk more about unrevoking a credential in your use case?
Um, well, in my team, we are using Bezu as VDR right now, and we are working on the unrevoke process, meaning you get it's basically the negative of revocation. Like instead of you're taking the accumulator value, you're putting it back, and that I saw that's already implemented in NanoCreds, and but in Akapai there is no code for that. It's just for revocation. So we are implemented here in our fork for Bazel specifically. But one thing that we were discussing here was how the holder is gonna know that his credential was unrevoked. Well, the revocation is the usual way. So you get the revocation notification and you get you get the message for the holder. But for unrevoking credentials, there is no message for that. So it's basically letting the holder knows that his credential is active again.
So I think, thank you. I think the reason we have not previously discussed it is most folks after a revocation would just reissue the credential rather than unrevoke it. So that's what I was kind of curious about your use case, if you were
Yeah.
using revocation as a temporary status or if it was just to back off an accidental
It,
revocation.
it's more like it's a holding for analysis. Our customer is they have the following case. They revoke the credential, they check for potential frauds or anything wrong with that credential,
Mm.
and if there's no deal with the credential, they unrevoke and the process flows. But
Does
in
that
the other
process happen
case,
right at the issuance of the
That's
credential?
what?
Does that process happen right at the issuance of the credential, or does that happen with some process that occurs after it's been initially issued?
Way after. In this case, the holder has this credential for some time, and for some reason, the issuer notes that there is something wrong with the credential. So the issuer revokes the credential, sends a message like, "Well, we are checking for security reasons." Well, I don't know. And after some time, if the credential is indeed not valid, it stays revoked. But if it was a false negative, the issuer unrevokes the credential and the holder can use it like he was before. Yep, kind of just like suspend.
if I could, exactly. That's really interesting because W3C went through a big thing where they changed the credential revocation, mechanism to call it credential status and suspend it. I've always wondered about the use case, and now I get it, where that comes in. So they went through quite a change to go to what's called to include that you could have revocation status and suspend status and any other status you want. But I've never known anyone beyond revoke. So this is very interesting. Yeah, and of course, an on-creds allows you to do that as would status list 2020 allow you to toggle the bit, turn on and off the revocation. So interesting.
That adds some color and makes sense. Mechanically speaking, this would be an addition to the protocol,
Yeah.
meaning there are new messages there, and so it would require. I don't know that it requires a major version bump, but it would require
No, just a minor.
version bump because it's an addition. Um, and so part of your PR would need to be updated in order to represent the additional version bump with a note at the top, as well as modifying the examples to be 2.1
Yep.
in the
Yeah,
2.0
one
in the
thing
2.0
I
case.
was thinking about was Stephen's comment to not add a new type, but add a new attribute to the message. It is his latest comment.
I don't
Either
think
way,
it,
that would
yeah.
either way
Either
that
way,
would
it's a
require a new
change.
version.
Yeah.
Yeah. I was just wondering whether, I just wanted to raise it as, is it possible that would be a better way to go? Um,
I
I don't know.
I don't think so. Um,
Okay.
I think semantically messages line up really well with not entirely, but with verbs or some sort of state change that's happened, and then the attributes are more about what happened. Um,
Okay.
so if you take this to the extreme and things are attributes, then you'd basically only you know if you and I realize that no one's proposing we take it to the extreme, but as a way to sort of explore the concept, if you were to have one message in the protocol and then it could branch in 5 different ways depending on the depending on the attributes of the message, then that gets really messy. The processing of an unrevoke message is so similar to a revoke message that there's a lot of even shared code that could actually occur there. And so there's of course there's an expectation that you would involve some code reuse and stuff like that in the message processing. But yeah, I think that's so my vote is that it stays a message as proposed. You've also proposed that this happen in V1 and in V2 of the protocol.
Yeah, it was just to keep compatibility.
Yeah. I think that's reasonable. Did want to point out, I heard actually in an unrelated conversation that Credo doesn't support 183 at all, which probably makes sense. This whole idea of tracking by thread ID, it was an unfortunate setting on 183. So 721 is very important to make sure we get it. But I
Well,
think we should do both.
I unless there's actually a need to update the old version of the protocol, I think that providing this in a new, in the newest version of the protocol going forward is what I feel like makes more sense to me. I'm not going to die on that hill, but I think that
Mhm.
that updating old protocols that were kind of that are more or less considered deprecated, I think
Mhm.
is a little bit weird. And in that case, having the change be present in the new version of the protocol seems to make the most sense to me. Unless there's like a reason that someone couldn't use the version 2, but version 2 is not DIDCOM v2 related, right?
Yeah. The one I'm wondering about is what does Akapai support? I don't know that.
I'm not mistaken, Akapai supports both protocols.
Okay.
I don't know about you said the Credo just supports the one.
I'm pretty sure it's just 721. And that's
721.
because yeah,
Version
183 is
2 here,
the
yeah.
yeah, yeah. Yeah, as I say, 183 had this unfortunate reliance on the holder remembering the thread ID that it received the credential on, versus just simply using the revocation ID, what amounts to the revocation ID, which is that two-part rev registry and index concatenated key.
Yeah, actually, the uh, last time I saw the Credo to work with 183, it didn't use the actual thread ID. It used a
Okay,
different
yeah,
format, weird one
yeah.
actually.
So, I think my vote is still for only updating the version 2. Do you intend to use the version 2 of the protocol? That's for
Our team's code is in the version 1, but that's a minor update for us. So I'm okay to just change the version 2 and leave the one behind.
given that
Okay,
this is yeah, that's where my
yeah.
vote goes is that we do V2 and then leave V1 alone.
Let's add a
And then
note to V1 saying this feature has been added. So instead
yeah,
of putting it into V1, let's put a note in V1 saying this feature's been added. If you need it, upgrade to V2.
V2, right.
Yeah.
Yes, and I think that that's totally appropriate. The and then in the change log, it's noting the date at which we added the 2.1, and for what purpose,
Right.
and then adding those other messages, and then updating the 2.1, in the examples would then clarify that. And then
Okay.
given those changes, I think we accept this. Anyone with other comments or opposed to that action? Okay. I think that makes a really nice improvement, and to support that more flexible case.
Right. Oh, I'm gonna make the changes.
Awesome,
Awesome.
thank you.
Yeah, and then tag us so that we can review, and then I think we're good. That's
Yeah,
Okay.
awesome.
Okay. Right.
Thank you for this. This is how things get better, is when people submit pull requests, and we discuss, and we figure out how to improve things. And so I very much appreciate your contribution.
Okay. Right.
Cool. Okay. We're out of our main agenda at this point. Are there other things that folks want to discuss? Questions you want to ask? Um, things we want to discuss on any topic? All right. I hear nothing. So we've got some work in front of us. I'm writing up some stuff on message processing. Stephen is um, okay. Hang on, Sarada, I'll get to your question in just a second. So Stephen's got some PRs to create, some pull requests for the Open Wallet Foundation proposed projects to start that discussion. We have the messaging draft to review and tune, and then I've got some stuff to write about processing DIDCOM messages. And then here's this question from. Okay, I have some microphone issues that's traveling. I've asked this question to the Discord channels too. Is there a way to get data from networks from Fabric to create an Aries VC? So there's not really an Aries VC. Do you mean in a non-creds VC? Is that the question there? I see your question. If I need to do something like this is a point where I need to get some data from Fabric and create VCs, we need to do so manually. The code, given your question in Discord, the code is not written for that, but you could use uh, the code bases to create VCs once you actually have the data from Fabric, but the code does not already exist to retrieve the data from Fabric in order to then create a VC with the same data. So that would be code you would need to write. So there definitely is a way, but you'd need to write that yourself. The mediator is used for passing DIDCOM messages. If you are writing code to retrieve data from Fabric, then you would be able to do that directly the way that Fabric works. And the actual data retrieval from Fabric wouldn't need a mediator. So in Akapai, for example, you would oh yeah, mediator in general. If you do intend to speak DIDCOM, then and you're not able to host like
oh,
a publicly available server, then you would need a mediator. If you can host like a public server, meaning it has like an IP address or a domain name that anyone can route to, then you don't actually need a mediator in order to run the agent.
Sam, I think he's saying a mediator between Aries and Fabric.
Oh, like a
It-
translation layer?
a translation layer. Yeah, that's what he's meaning.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah,
Thank you, Stephen, for putting me back on track here. Yeah, you'll need to write like an adapter or a bridge, or other words I might use. Between that in ACAPI, you
yeah,
would likely write that inside of the controller code that then would gather the data from Fabric and then use the APIs between the controller and ACAPI itself to then
yeah.
issue the credential, and that would be the right place to put that code, that bridge code or the connector code. Yes.
And I pointed this person, I'm not sure who it is, to Dave Mithrain. I don't know if anyone else knows him on the call. I couldn't find him on Discord, which surprised me, but he did a pile of work. I think he's still working in the Credo space, but did a pile of work of creating a Fabric VDR, so you could store a non-creds objects on Fabric. So I know he's got probably the best experience in crossing over between the two environments. Okay. Oh, you
Cool.
found him. Good. Excellent.
Nice. Cool.
Good.
Nice. Okay. Cool. Any other topics for discussion today? Yes, and thank you for bringing up the question. I'm glad we could discuss it here and make some progress in understanding that. That's really helpful. All right. I think that means we are done for today. I appreciate all of you being here, and I hope your week is a great one. And we will update as steps are made on the various things we've discussed today. We'll go ahead and update the channels and share that news around to make all that happen. So with that, we'll call it for today, and we will see you all in other meetings or next week.
All right, thank you.
Take care all. See ya.
Take
Okay,
care.
thank you.